Well, I'm so glad you're here, Gary. Nice to have you with us and to hear more of your story, because I get to see you in action at Tyndale, and you're doing a great job there
Thank you.
as the president. Tell me a little bit about your own faith journey.
Oh, gosh. My journey, I grew up in church, but when I went off to university, I was on a football scholarship and probably trying to find faith for myself, and came to faith in my first year of university.
Wow.
It wasn't because I felt any kind of sense of, well, this is terrible to say, sinfulness, but more of a sense of a lack of purpose.
Right.
And a lack of just direction, and I think that's exactly what happened for me. My call to ministry, all of those things happened almost at the same time, and at that time I was studying phys ed. So
really?
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's probably why you have such a heart and connection for university students.
I do. I love students. Yeah. I've been one of the ones that didn't do well in my first year because I was too busy partying. So
oh my. So that once you got past you found the Lord and you got your calling. So what was that lead into ministry? What did that? How did your journey then unfold?
It was just, I grew up in a downtown church, and most of my ministry has been in our urban church renewal kind of situations.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my background in terms of my studies was urban missiology. So what does it mean to be the church in the city? So, so it's been a lot of fun over the years. So,
well, I really appreciate your story, and I had the privilege then of reading your book, Leading in DisOrienting Times.
Right.
I'm passionate about leadership. I've worked for John Maxwell, and I've spent a lot of time myself leading and learning leadership, which is endless. And your book stood out to me so much, Gary, I found, and Peter Dickens, who you wrote it with, which I knew as well. It was a unique leadership book. Now, I know you want me to say that. Right?
No, actually, I appreciate you saying that.
Good.
We did try. We tried to kind of make it accessible to kind of people, anybody. You know.
It is, and there were so many things that stood out in that book to me that many leadership books have been written, as you know. Right. But tell me a little bit about when you wrote this book. Like, what led you to writing Leading in DisOrienting Times?
Well, part of it was because Peter, at that time, Peter was quite sick, and actually Peter passed away a year after the book came out. But he was an amazing, he was talking about complexity theory when everybody else was still just talking about leadership.
Okay, complexity theory.
Well, it's the idea, it's the idea that we no longer live in kind of times, like a simple challenge would be like baking bread. If you follow the formula, you follow the recipe, it works. A complicated problem would be, you'd still have a formula, like building a rocket ship. And if you build that, there's still formulas, but if you do it right, the rocket ship will fly. But a complex problem is like raising a family. And there's no rules. The kids are different, all of those different kinds of things. And the rules change. And so, and I think we in the church love the idea of simple solutions to complex problems. And so as we tried to look at the book, we wanted to provide help for people to understand the times that we live in. It feels chaotic. It feels disorienting. But how do you begin to create a kind of framework that helps you as a leader try things, fail? I mean, how do you say that it's okay to fail? We built, I met lots of church planters who wanted to do really creative things, but they were afraid because their denomination wouldn't let them fail. But how else are you going to figure that out? So that was the challenge for us. And so we thought this was the kind of book that was needed.
Well, I really appreciate not only the deeply biblical richness of the book, but the practicalness of the book. And as you know, I had an assignment in my class. So I wrote a paper on your book. Do you want to give me an A right now? No. But here's some of as you said, this is something that really stood out to me. And I've read a lot of leadership books, Gary, and I've learned a lot of hard leadership lessons.
Sure.
But this idea of emergent self-organization. This is actually deeply biblical, but explain to us, what do you mean by that? Like, how is that any different than the way we've run or led organizations before?
Well, I think in the past, leadership happened from the top down, and you shaped a form and a framework, And what's happening now is in these emergent forms is they actually self-organize. And how do you allow that to take place? And how do you not control it? I mean, we always talk about allowing the Spirit to work, but we would really like the Spirit to do it the way we would feel most comfortable, right? And so how do you allow the forms and the frames to actually emerge and to get, and part of leadership in this day and age is to then, how do you fan the flame when you see it beginning to emerge without quenching it?
And it's underneath all of that, I see this empowering model of leadership that Jesus had, right? That he just was like empowered you not only through the gifts and the Spirit, but like as an organization working together and fanning into flame the gifts that are and the people that are under you. And it's not just a team mentality, but it's truly that emerging the group of people that you have around you.
And churches are so nervous because they think they're losing control.
Yes.
But in truth, what's actually happening is the principles, the themes are probably the same.
Yeah.
But the difference is that it'll take different forms for the different times that we're in. And I think that's the challenge for leadership. Like people will often say to me, well, you really, you got everything that you wanted. Well, the truth is, when you lead, you're actually learning how to listen to other people and allow them to shape what the vision might look like. And then you get better ownership.
I agree. And I've watched you model that. Really, leadership is stooping down and lifting other people up. And I see you as a good listener, and more problems are solved if we let more voices at the table.
I could have come to this more often.
Well, there you go. I'll make you feel really good. Let me, this one quote just hit me so hard. We all talk about servant leadership and we believe in it as believers because that's what Jesus was. But you said in your book, each one of us has an audience of significance to which we play our lives. Deciding who the audience will be is critical because it will be the approval of that audience that will matter most to us. It will be the values and priorities of that audience of choice that will emerge. So who's your audience as a leader, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that becomes the challenge. You see it in pastors' conferences. Is your audience God?
Yeah.
Or is your audience the other pastors who want you to want to be the successful one in the room?
Right.
And how do you lay that aside and actually become a leader that leads the way God is calling you?
Yeah. Transactional leadership versus transformational leadership.
Absolutely.
Give me your insight on that. Why is that so important?
Because it makes all the difference. Transactional is about making a deal. Transformational is we both get changed in the process. I get changed because you bring something into to being.
That's so good. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your book. Where can people find it?
They can find it on Amazon. They can get it from the bookstore at Tyndale. So it's available everywhere.
That's great. Well, I know I have it on my Kindle. That's why it's not in my hands today, but you can get it in your hands if you go to Amazon or to tyndale.ca. And it's a wonderful book. It's blessed me. It's encouraged me as a leader. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now this is the story of the Miracle Moonlight Rescue in alligator-infested waters. Wow.